Hello, my fellow teachers. We're back.
Hello,
Renee and
Ruby.
Ruby. In other words, two tired teachers. We've been tired, so that's why we haven't been here. So
Very much
we're
so.
the time being, we're going to again try to stay on course with this, but it is what it is. Life happens and we're living life. So there's that. So I just want to welcome you back. Thank you for tuning in whenever it is that you're tuning in and listening to us. We kind of have changed our format a little bit. We're going to start today with a math tip, and then we're going to have a teacher tip. So our math tip for today, since we're at the beginning of a brand new school year, we're going to be talking about place value. For the most part, everybody, at least in Texas, starts with place value. If you're not in Texas, place value is still the important foundation for everything that we do in every grade level in math. So that's what we're going to be starting with today, and I'm going to turn that over to Ruby.
Well, I call this my favorite strategy. And let me say, it's just a strategy. It works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. But it's my favorite strategy. I learned that one from Vinay, looking at her, and I have kept up with this one for years now. It has worked pretty nicely for my kids, especially when they hit decimals, because it's easy to figure out what they're doing, and gives them enough space if they need to use it on any kind of test or things like this, and it does not take a lot of time like the usual that we do with the whole table and things like this. So I am going to share my document camera, and bear with me, people, because it's a teacher's document camera. It's not going to be the best quality, but here we go. So for place value, usually what we do in the lower grades, we just add, here we go, we just add space for each one. And there's different ways of calling it, the place value houses and whatever you want. The thing is that it takes too much time. Now, don't get me wrong, when you need time for the kids to learn it, by all means, take your time. But once they got the concept, then you're kind of looking at simplifying and gaining time. In our case, you start with a small space like this. And if you are in the lower primary grades, on the top, you just mark which spaces. These will be the ones. And then this will be the tens. And then this will be the hundreds. And so on and so on and so on. And the kids just know that they have to write in the digits. And that's it. Nothing else than that. Now it becomes a little bit more interesting when you hit the decimal part. And in Texas, the decimals will appear for the first time in 4th grade, and operations with decimals. So this becomes space for the whole number. Then you mark the decimal point, then the tenths place, and usually I will mark that it's a tenth, and then the hundredths place, and then the thousands place if you hit 5th grade. In 4th grade will be to the hundreds place. This is your strategy. Now this one will work perfectly well when they have to input a number. The whole part of the number will always be under the whole number. Then they just line up the decimal point, and then whatever else they have to write in underneath each one of the places. This one will help you a lot when it comes to adding or subtracting decimals, because the same will apply. And then you line up a decimal point, and then you have the digits underneath the places. Here's where you can explain the meaning of a zero placeholder. And then the results with the first thing getting down on the lining up of the decimal points. Same strategy can be used for rounding. It's exactly the same way. They just have to write in the places. And then the numbers will be separated by digits in their spatial places by value. And this way they will see which one is the place that they will have to target for rounding. What I usually do, I will separate like this, the place. Same applies, same strategy applies for comparing. They just put the two numbers underneath each other, and then they compare which place has more value, where the digit is bigger or not. This is my favorite strategy for place value, and makes it easy, makes it fast for some reason, and I will not know to tell you why exactly, but it has worked perfectly well with my 4th and 5th graders.
And I'll also just add this in there as well. When you're converting decimals to fractions or fractions to decimals, sometimes it may be helpful to put the numbers on top of the lines. That way they can clearly see when you're doing the decimals what the denominator is. I found that to be helpful as well.
So thank you. That's the same strategy that I use for converting. It's the whole number, and then the tens, and then the hundreds and the thousands if you want to, it doesn't matter. But now you write the digits on the top. So let's suppose your whole part will be 39, and then you have 927,000. Now in this case, they already see where it is, and it's very easy for them to write 39 as a whole number. Hold on, let me stretch it a little bit. And then they just fill the last one, the last place, and write the digits on the top. Like this.
Absolutely.
And that's my favorite place value strategy. Now you taught me how to do that. Any comment about it?
No, all I'll say is, and I think that just came out of the need to not, as you said from the beginning, create that entire place value chart over and over again. For some students, like she said at the beginning, that just making that chart was overwhelming, and them trying to line up everything and draw these lines and spaces and so forth and so on. I just found that became easier for some kids. It was just not so overwhelming. And I know you can use graph paper. Some people use graph paper, and some people take the notebook paper and turn it sideways so that you have the columns and everything. But for some kids, that's just too much. And it was just too much for me. So out of, just convenience, I started doing that. So thank you for attributing that to me.
In my case, after I saw you, because I was struggling with, they were spending so much time of making straight lines on the table. It was like, my first reaction was going to say to them, it's not the art class, people. We're in the math class. Just make the line. Doesn't matter what it is. And then it became a joke, but they will still have to use more of their time just for making the table. So when I saw you doing that, it was like immediately, but that's it. I don't need anything else but a specific space, a line where they can put their digits there, and that's it. And it has worked. It has worked pretty nicely.
I agree. It has worked for me over the years as well. And think about your perfectionist children. They will spend all day trying to get those lines, adjusted and right and that kind of thing. And this takes some pressure off of them as well. And I also found that, during a test, we know that our tests basically are timed tests.
Mhm.
You could just put this at the top of the page and use it, over and over again without having to, again, stress over making this enormous grid over and over again. So it was I think a strategy of convenience more than anything else. And for me, all those lines, way too much. I didn't want to keep making it over and over again. So I know kids don't want to keep making it over and over again.
Plus,
Okay.
the other thing that helped me a lot, especially with my students, because everybody knows by now that I am working with the bilingual kids, and it kind of took away a lot of the wording that they were uncomfortable with, because it was like the house of the tens, the house of the hundreds. It kind of became too wordy for them. And there will be, instead of trying to explain or work out the problem, especially when you're in a test, they're trying to kind of figure out which house is it and what the house means and everything. And don't get me wrong, it's very cute, and probably for the lower grades, it's one of the nicest ones to work, but it does not work once you hit third, fourth, and fifth grade, because it becomes a grade where the text comes into play. And the other thing I wanted to say, converting decimals to fractions, base 10 fractions, and then to the percentages, it's probably the strategy that has been working better for me than anything else.
That's good. That's good.
And it's strategy. Sorry, it's a strategy. We're just talking about strategy. This is not the method. This is just a strategy. And as we said in the beginning, it's just the strategy that worked for us through the years. Maybe it will work for you too.
Exactly. And again, I want to re-emphasize the fact that we're not saying don't do the elaborate place value chart with the houses and the periods and all the other niceties that we put in that chart. We're not saying that. We're saying once you get past that part and you need to move on and not have students continually draw that whole elaborate thing, this is a strategy that you can use. That's all we're saying. I want to make sure so that we don't get any comments about, oh, but they need to know this, that, and the other. We agree, but we're talking about once you move past that. And of course, you're going to have that up in your classroom as an anchor chart or a poster as well. So it'll always be where they can see it.
Yeah. Well, it's a strategy. That's why it's a strategy, I said, and it's a strategy that works after the concept has been mastered.
Exactly.
It's not going to work when you start presenting place value. It's not going to work like that. And then when you start using it in fourth and fifth grade, for example, when the decimals come to play a role, then it's not going to work before you have built the concept of the decimal, which between us people, money helps a lot, helps a lot. Okay, but it's not going to work before that. It's a strategy that comes in after the concept has been built, and it's a strategy to save time and to make it easier for everybody to work through it.
And since she threw the money part out there, as you're making your anchor chart to put in class, which I don't have a picture of mine, but there are plenty of pictures out there on Pinterest and wherever it is that you look up ideas for making your anchor chart, where they literally have the money underneath each of the place values on the anchor chart. So in your ones place, there's a dollar bill. In your tens place, there's a $10 bill. In your tenths place, they're dimes. in your hundreds place, there are pennies.
Mhm.
So like she said, as soon as you can make that connection, I start the year with that poster. I have it up from the beginning, even for third graders who are not doing decimals at that point. I still want them to see that there is something after the whole number, because we've found that fourth and fifth graders don't understand when you get to decimals that is when you look at a whole number, there's still a decimal there. It just means it doesn't have any parts attached to it. And putting that up there helps them to see, oh, the decimal's still there. We just, as a people, don't say that part if it's a whole number because there's no parts attached to it. So it's just something for you to think about. Put it on the wall, even if you're, primary, third grade, and you're not doing decimals yet, they can still start to visualize that in their head as to what these place values actually mean.
And it still turns out, even for the lower grades, the one real connection to the world that they have, it's the money. And I know we will have a lot of people that say, well, no, they don't know exactly the money because we're using cards now, the parents. But remember, they're still dealing with the allowance in Saturday. They do know the value. If you ask, what's more, $10 or $5, the kids will immediately tell you when you add just this part of money. It's the connection to the real world.
Yes. And since we all know that that's a big push right now, to connect everything to the real world, to help them to solidify that concept, that's the perfect example. All right. Well, we thank you, Miss Rumi, for sharing that tip with us today. So now we're going to move on to our teacher tip. Again, it's the beginning of the year. All of us are excited. For those of you that have already started, for those of us that start next week, a tear. There you go. But this is one of the things that I'm sure in your professional developments and everything that's going on, you're going to hear this over and over again, that we have to build relationship with our students. It doesn't matter how many good strategies we have for the academics if we don't have this relationship built. So our teacher tip for today, I'm going to throw it out there because I think because of the times that we're in, especially since the times that we had to go home, and you all know what I mean, when everything shut down and everybody got locked in the house, I'm going to talk about Maslow before Bloom. And I'm sure if you're attending your professional developments, you're going to hear this a lot now because I'm hearing it more expressed this way than I have in the past. We all know who Maslow and Bloom are. If you've had any kind of psychology class, even in high school, these names have come up in your study of psychology. So we know that they're both noted because of their behavioral theories. So Bloom's, we can spout Bloom's in our sleep because we know that Bloom's taxonomy is what is used to drive our objectives for each day. And that's one of the things I know is probably the bane of your existence, just like it is mine, when you go to planning and you're looking at those objectives and they're talking about those words that you need to have in there to make sure that your objectives are worthy of being used in your class. So we understand the Bloom's part of this statement. We understand that that's all about academics, but because of the times that we're in, and again, I'm going back to 2020 when everybody went home, we know that all of us are feeling some kind of trauma or having some kind of trauma. And as an adult, you know, when you have this trauma situation, it's hard for you to think about everything else. And just a simple example, we're in a time right now where inflation is seemingly out of control. Everything is costing us much more money. That's what's forefront in our thinking. You know, am I going to have enough money to pay for this? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to have enough for my children to do this? Is my family going to be okay in this situation? Those are the things that are forefront in our thinking. And because those are the things that are forefront in our thinking, a lot of stuff is being pushed to the back. We're not even thinking about those things. I can't even deal with this because I'm worried about everyday life. And the same thing is going on with our children. I was reading an article, and I'm going to read it verbatim what they said, that according to, and this is for Texas people, according to the Texas Education Association, in any given classroom of 24 students, nearly half of the class has been exposed to at least one traumatic event, and 4 students have mental health issues that impair their learning. And I'll drop that link in the bio later. Just thinking about that, at least one kid has had a traumatic experience, and 4 of them have some mental health issues. They may be small or they may be large. You know your kids. These things are going on. So when those kids walk into your room, the first thing on their mind is not going to be place value. The first thing on their mind is going to be what they're dealing with before they walked into your room. That's still going to be the thing that's utmost in their minds. So with knowing that, we as the adults in the situation have to deal with what's in their mind before we can think about teaching them place value. So the tip for today is build those relationships from the beginning. And I know we hear this every year, but it's really important to build those relationships. And how do you build those relationships? It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. I know all of us have seen TikTok and Instagram and all those other little nice videos of the teachers that stand at the door and do all the different handshakes and do the little dances and do all the little things, you know, as each student comes in the door. Let's face it, that's not me. I'm not going to do a little dance with you standing in the door, but I am willing to greet you every morning. Good morning, ask you how you're doing. How was your weekend? How was your evening? I am willing to call you by your name specifically and pronounce your name correctly. And I'm saying this for a reason, because, you know, let's just put it out there. Some kids have some names that some of us can't pronounce. I have one of those names that when you look at it, you're going to say one thing and it isn't that. So I understand the importance of pronouncing someone. Rumi can tell you. Rumi, say your name.
My full complete name is Rumiana Mikhailova, so it's like I know exactly how it goes.
Exactly. So, you know, right. So just taking the time to pronounce a student's name correctly and greet them each morning could be all you need to do to get them to understand that you care about them. You are in their corner. You want them to do their best. Build those relationships. Now, I know many of us have all these little worksheets and little games and little things that we do, you know, to get to know the students, but some of that is not even necessary. They want more of the human connection rather than, you know, putting a nice little pennant up on the wall that tells me everything about your life. Now, don't get me wrong. I can learn a lot from having you do those kind of things, your interests, your birthday, your all those kind of things that teachers like to know. But at the end of the day, even that worst kid, the kid that you consider the worst, that you feel like I'm never going to have a connection with that kid, even if you speak to them every single day and ask them how their day was and they half give you an answer or won't answer you at all, those kids still will feel connected to you. And I'm gonna just step out on a limb and say, you know, I've had it in personal experience, even over the last 2 years. One kid who I just knew, this kid hates me as much as, you know, we have conversation, but he hates me, blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't think he can. And I pretty much, you know, some days I couldn't stomach him as well. And we just had that going, but I was always consistent. I always talked to him just like I talked to the rest of the students. At the end of the year, the last day of school, he came to me and said, I have one request from you. And I'm thinking, what in the world? All the trouble you've given me this year, you want to walk up and tell me you have a request? But his request was, can you please come with me to middle school? And I was in shock. I was in complete shock because I'm thinking, okay, this kid and I have rubbed each other wrong the entire year. And that was his last request for me. So relationships do work. He was one of those kids who didn't want to do work in school. He, any assignment you gave him, he had a reason why he couldn't do it. But I guess because of our relationship, he would eventually do it. Now, did he do it to the best of his ability? No. But did he do it? Yes. Were some days a struggle? Yes. Were there times when I had to say, okay, I'm going to need you to go in the other room and have a seat for a few minutes because you need to be away from me and I need to be away from you? Yes, those days came. But at the end of the year, because of the relationship that we did have, he wants me to go to middle school with him. Mm-hmm. And so I did keep in touch with the assistant principal from the middle school to know how he was doing. They had some challenges. And she said there were some days, she probably could have called me or whatnot. But that's what happens. So relationship matters. And I'm going to also put this in, relationship matters for adults as well. Now, we know the principal is not going to stand at the door and greet each one of us as we come in. Some days you're not going to even see your principal. But your team may be those people for you. So build relationship with your teams. I'm not going to act like every team is perfect and you're going to always like and want to be around everybody on your team, but you still need the relationships because there's going to be some days where you don't want to be there either. Let's be real. We're adults. We have things going on too. So we need relationship as well. So try as hard as you can to have that going on with the teachers as well as your class. And I'm going to end it with that and just let that marinate in your head. That relationship is important because we cannot expect to make them get the academics that we're trying to give to them if we've not dealt with their SEL. And I know right now that's a hot topic, the SEL, but the SEL is important. It's important for them as well as it's important for me. Because if I'm dealing with stuff at home and I come to work and the first thing you do is bombard me with what I got to do for this day, and you don't even say, are you, how are you? Hello, blah, 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 to kind of give me a chance to breathe, I'm going to have some problems too. So let's think about the Maslow before Bloom as we start this school year. I'm also going to put in some links of some ideas of things that you can do to build relationships. And again, they don't have to be those elaborate TikTok things that you see, because I'm one that's never going to be a thing for me. But I am willing to, it may be for Rumi because she's different, but it's never going to be for me to stand at the door and do all the different handshakes. Because let me just face it, I'm old and I'm not going to remember all this stuff. But I can at least speak to you every day, ask you how was your weekend, how are you doing, and call you by your name and know that that's important. Have those one-on-one moments. They want to tell you, whether some things that they want to tell you, it's not going to be things that you think necessarily that you should be hearing. But if that's what it's going to take in order for you to have a successful day in your class, you may need to take those few minutes and listen to what they have to say. Rumi, do you have anything to add to that?
I completely agree. And listen, it has been a topic for a long time because we say build relationships, but nobody tells you how to build the relationships. And it's because it's personal to the kids and to the teacher, how you're going to approach that. It's your personality, okay? I know that by the middle of the year, I become the hugging teacher, but in the beginning of the year, I'm not. So I take time before going to the classroom to look around social media and see what my kids are seeing, looking, what's the new song and everything else. And then I present myself the way that I want to see them I do have to stand on the door. It's a policy in my school district. And I do have a cutesy thing, especially when we were, and still some places that there's strict rules for handshake and things like this. But, and here comes the thing, I am a huge K-pop and K-drama fan, so I have hearts, finger hearts for everybody, okay? So this is one of those things that I allow them to see parts of me. And then when I start asking questions for them, I always say, especially when it's a personal thing, if you want to tell me, if not, I'm leaving it. And I stick to it. So that's how they start building trust, because in the beginning, it's not going to be easy. So whatever they say, it stays with me because it's a trust building. And have fun. That's the number one thing. You don't have to be around dancing, which I'm doing. But in the classroom, if you have fun with them, they will relax. That has been my experience. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say for introvert teachers, which I'm kind of leaning that side, just say it, tell them, just make them aware that, hey, maybe I'm not going to be high-fiving you all the time because this is who I am, and they will understand that. So I had a principal that used to say that I can pretty much get away with the murder in the classroom and my group will cover for me. But it's how you start, slowly, slowly, slowly. And the more you allow them to see of you, more they will trust to show you. It doesn't have to be crazy thing and crazy stuff and nothing like this. I introduce my dogs, for example. That's it. Now, I will not be the one to tell you exactly what to do, how to do it, because as I said, it's a personal, it depends on your personality and it depends on the group that you have. But always remember, going back to Maslow, the kids have that enormous ability of thinking that everything that is wrong is because of them.
Mm-hmm.
So more you show that to them, more you show your concerns to them, and they already have it at home. They don't have to see it in the classroom too. Is it vulnerable to say, okay, listen, today it's a bad day for me. It's, for me, has worked always. They know that it's not a good day and they actually start respecting it. So I always thought that the first thing of building a relationship will be honest. Just tell them, they know. Even the kindergarten kids will know that. So this is just a small talk about it. It's not how, I know that everybody will come up with ideas. If you're a new teacher, just look around, look what other teachers are doing, and whatever suits you, just take it.
And I'll end it with whatever you decide to do, make sure it's something that you're willing to do for the entire year.
Yes.
You're gonna have to do it for the entire year. You can't do it for the first 2 weeks, you know, when our honeymoon, once the honeymoon phase is over, you get to stop. It's something that you need to want to do for the whole year. So find something that's, like she said, that goes with your personality, to make sure. And the last thing I'll say is, when you do these things, even if it's just a greeting in the morning, it can kind of give you a feel of how your day is going to go, because it helps you to see, oh, this one is not in a good mood today. And like she said, I allowed my students to say, you know, did you get up on the wrong side of the bed today? And they can tell me, yes, this is not a good day, or, you know, yes, it's a good day, or this happened or that happened, in confidence or whatever. But be honest and be willing to do this for the entire year. And we're just about out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it there, because we probably could talk about this for a very long time, because it is something that's uber important right now. It is something that's uber important. But I'm going to end it. And we thank you for listening to us today. And we want to let you know that our next topic, our next math strategy, is going to be about number bonds. So that's what you can look for in the next video. We'll see you soon. This is Benet and
Rumi.
Two Tired Teachers, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.